The Prophet ﷺ described intoxicants, alcohol, and drugs as khaba'ith, the mother of evil and corruption. And surely we are witnessing that today, where drugs and alcohol, etc., has driven so much of the society into the destruction of so many people's lives, breaking into homes, all the various crimes that we're experiencing. As drugs and alcohol increase in their presence in society, we see an increase in the breakup of families, we see an increase in the destruction of human life. And finally, among the principles of Islam, which is very attractive to people who are thinking, is the principle of racial harmony. Racial harmony, which is addressed in the teachings in the Quran itself, wherein Allah describes man as being created from a male and female, and made into tribes and nations in order that they may know each other, not that they despise each other. But then Allah clarifies the best of people are those who fear Allah the most. This is the criterion. This is what distinguishes good among people and evil or bad. So from the very beginning of Islam in the final form, 1400 years ago, we find the principles of racial harmony, that people are not judged by the color of their skin or the quality of their hair, their eyes, etc., but are judged according to piety. We find this principle firmly entrenched from the very beginnings of Islam. When we look at the world today, we see that this issue of racial harmony plays a very destructive role from the period of colonialism, when European powers forced itself upon the rest of the world, so-called colored peoples of the world, where racialism became institutionalized in places like the United States and South Africa, and continues to be practiced in much of the Western countries, with, again, there are minorities, the minorities that have come from the so-called third world countries. We find neo-Nazism on the rise, all these various racialist, nationalistic groups arising in these times. The only solution for this, though the state tries to oppose it through legislation, the only solution is to change the hearts of the people. You can change the laws externally, but the hearts of the people, if they're not changed, this will never be eradicated, or never be pushed down to such a level that it doesn't play a destructive and corruptive role in society. Today we find a resurgence of Islam. A resurgence wherein Muslim movements are arising in various parts of the Muslim world, where Muslims seek to rule themselves again in accordance with the principles of Islam. And at the same time, we find a rise in Islam in the West, in the countries, the colonial powers that sought to subjugate Muslim peoples and to eradicate Islam in the past. This has been a product, to some degree, of the new intellectual leadership of Western educated Muslims, those who came from Muslim lands and were educated in the West and came to know about Islam and understand their responsibility of Islam after they were threatened in living in these societies. They took this new understanding back to their country and a movement began. They also affected some of the people in the Western society, and the process of conversion of Westerners to Islam begins. We also find that the media, which has played a very negative role against Islam over the past centuries, is now being used by Muslim movement to educate Muslims. Islamic newspapers, magazines, tapes, lectures, videos, etc. are increasing and educating as such the Muslim communities, both here and back in the countries where Muslims are in majority or represent minority communities. However, there are some negative factors which are holding Islam from reaching the masses of the people in the West as well as in the East in the way that it should. And the first among those negative factors is the ignorance that remains due to the cultural practice of Islam in many areas. Back in Muslim countries, what is Islam, in fact, is folk Islam or cultural Islam. Much of the practices have nothing to do with the true teachings of Islam. And because of that, the image that is presented of Islam is quite incorrect, very superstitious, very backward. And this negative image, which is projected, is utilized by the media to further discourage people from being interested in Islam. We also find another factor, that of factionalism, where Muslims who are now conscious, seeking to promote Islam, get caught up in different factions, organizations, groups, sects, movements and sects and movement groups, etc., who, if they were truly about Islam, they would not represent a divisive role in the Muslim society. If they were truly those who support these movements, sects, if they were truly about Islam, then these movements would seek to work together. However, what we find are groups, sects, organizations, whose followers seek to promote the organization rather than promoting Islam. Islam is secondary. It's about joining my movement, or joining my organization, our organization. If you're not a part of our organization, then you're an enemy. I can't work with you. I don't want to have anything to do with you. This kind of an attitude destroys the Islamic effort, takes away the blessing, the barakah, from that effort to convey the word of God, to practice and to live in accordance with the word of God. This is something which Muslims have to address seriously, to tackle, to remove. Furthermore, we have another factor, that of ill preparation of those who would seek to lead and to guide Muslims. We have, in many cases, the blind leading the blind, people without knowledge leading others. And this is a very dangerous situation. One of the signs the Prophet ﷺ spoke of in the last days, that the ignorant would lead. Something we have to be aware of. To ensure that those who would lead us are those, in fact, who have sound knowledge to lead us.